Through the Western Union establishment, Sheikh Ahmed sent 15,000 rupees to Babakir and asked him to give 10,000 to Rehana and keep the rest of the money for himself for his trouble in finding her. After 1 week, Babakir met Rehana again in the same restaurant in which they sat and talked before. He informed her that her Saudi sponsor agreed to send her a new work visas and tickets for her and her daughter. He also told her that her sponsor had sent money so that she could use it to get new passports. He explained to her that Sheikh Ahmed informed him that Rehana's previous passport was stolen by the police at the time of her arrest and was sold to another Indian woman. That woman came to Jeddah and claimed to be Rehana Khan. She was arrested by Jeddah police and confessed how she came to be in possession of Rehana's passport, work visa, and ticket. The passport was rendered as an invalid document because of forgery. For this reason, Rehana needed to get her passport reissued in the correct identity. Regarding her daughter's passport, Babakir advised Rehana not to go to the police to try to retrieve her daughter's passport because the police might either arrest her again or try to blackmail her. After that, Babakir took the 10,000 rupees out of his pocket and gave her the money. Rehana had never seen such a large sum of money before. The highest amount of money she ever had saved her whole life amounted to about 400 rupees. Consequently, she was simply flabbergasted and elated at the same time. She thanked Babakir more than she thanked her Saudi sponsor, as if Babakir was the one who personally supplied her this huge sum of cash. She told him she needed someone to go with her to Worli passport office. Before Babakir could respond, she said she would go to the travel agency and ask Jamal Khan to take her to the passport office. "Never make that mistake again," shouted Babakir. "Your sponsor told me to tell you not to go to Muhammad Tours and Travels ever again. Besides, Jamal Khan no longer works for them. He was fired by Muhammad's wife. As for me, I too, no longer work there." Rehana felt very grieved in her heart when she was told her lover no longer worked at the travel agency. Babakir further stated to her that her sponsor requested he help her take care of all the necessary paperwork and this entire responsibility was now in his hands. Wherefore, he asked her to meet him the following day at the same restaurant so that he could take her to the passport office. Rehana wasn't happy about the new arrangement, but she had no choice in the matter and hence she agreed to meet her new assistant. The Sudanese boy once again insisted that the Indian slum woman share a meal with him before she left. He also ordered some takeout sandwiches and told her to take them to her daughter and sons. Babakir learned about Rehana's other children from his surprise visit to her small slum. Before she returned to her slum, Rehana went to a small market and bought clothes, cookies, and candies for her children. She also bought some clothes for her mother. It was for the first time in her life that she was able to buy new clothes for her family. Before she used to bring her children hand-me-down clothing from whatever her employers no longer wanted. Many times the clothing would either be too large or too small for her children, but poor people can't be choosy. Nevertheless, on this day, thanks to her sponsor, she picked the exact size for each of her sons. She bought a couple of lovely dresses for her daughter too. Because of the hefty endowment she received through Babakir, she went and phoned her employers and asked for an indefinite leave of absence. Some of her employers threatened to fire her if she did not show up for work. She did not care and hung up on them. She returned to her slum and fed her children with the sandwiches that Babakir had bought for them. After that she showed them the beautiful new dresses she had purchased for them. Finally, she opened the boxes of candies and cookies and her children jumped for joy and said, "Mommy, you're the best mommy in the whole world." While her children were still consuming their sweets, Rehana lied to her mother and daughter and told them that she was going back to work. She did not tell her mother or daughter about the money she received from her sponsor. She just took off and promised to return late evening. Rehana longed to reconnect with her lover and enjoy the same wonderful times they had spent together in downtown Bombay. She did not believe Jamal had been fired from his workplace and decided to find out for herself. She was longing for those endearing hugs and affectionate kisses. For all that she endured over the last 7 months, what she suffered even more was the loss of her lover. She recognized he had suffered so much because of her, and she wanted to apologize for his suffering, a crime he didn't commit. This time was different, and she would show her love by letting her money speak for itself. When Rayhana reached Kolaba, it was 3:15 p.m. She had no watch. She asked someone for the time. She remembered Jamal telling her he got off from work at 5 p.m. By her calculations, she had about an hour and 45 minutes to wait for him to appear. After that, she would be able to catch sight of her lover walking out of his office and heading home. She wanted to surprise him. Rayhana thought the Negro boy had lied to her on purpose. She suspected the old Saudi learned of her affair with Jamal and wanted to separate them. Somehow, it never occurred to ask herself why the Negro boy did not want her to meet Jamal, or why the old Saudi wanted to separate them. Rayhana waited eagerly across the street, behind the shadow of a tree. She did not want anyone from the office to see her. She was planning to follow her lover until there was a fair distance between them and the office before she approached him. The minutes felt like hours, and her heart became anxious for him, so much so that she started to walk back and forth across the street, pausing every so often to glance at the door to the office. Every time she looked, she saw the peon sitting on a wooden stool with a blank stare, looking at the people and cars passing by. His head swayed back and forth in semicircles. Rayhana was tempted to go and ask him to go inside and ask for Jamal to come out, but she had a nagging feeling that this might jeopardize his situation with his boss. At long last, Rayhana saw the employees of the travel agency begin to file out one after the other. She recognized most of them except for 2 new girls. She did not see Jamal among the employees, and the one man who appeared at the doorway was someone else. Rayhana's heart began to beat when she saw the girls and the one boy come out of the office and quickly merge into the busy rush hour crowd. She waited for her Jamal to come out, but he never did. After a few minutes, she saw the owner of the travel agency come out. He stood and talked to his peon before he walked away. Rayhana was very much disheartened, and her heart began to beat inside her so much she thought it would surely jump out of her chest. At this moment in time, she could feel she lost her love forever. This was the only place she knew to look for him, and that was at his workplace. When they met over 7 months ago, he had told her to send him letters to his work address. He had never taken her to his chawl. Rayhana's tears fell like the floodgates of heaven when she realized she had lost her love forever. She had no other means of contacting him. While her tears flowed like a river down her cheeks, an idea flashed into her mind. She crossed the street and went directly up to the peon. He had just finished closing all doors and was about to leave. She went to him and asked him about the young man that used to work there by the name of Jamal Khan. The peon recognized her from many months ago and from the trial. He answered in Rai, "He is not working here anymore." Rayhana asked him to tell her the name and address of his new workplace. The peon looked at her and said angrily, "How do I know where his new workplace is?" Rayhana, "When did Jamal stop coming to work?" Peon, "He stopped coming when he got fired." Rayhana, "Why did he get fired?" Peon, "I heard the girls saying he was fired because he went to jail." Rayhana got angry and said to the peon, "Even the boss went to jail for the same reason." The peon looked at Rayhana for some time before he turned and walked away. Standing there alone, Rayhana felt as if she was cast onto a deserted island to live the rest of her life all alone. She knew no one else was going to fill the aching hole in her heart the way Jamal had. She had missed his love so much during the time of her incarceration. When she was acquitted of all charges and set free from her imprisonment, the needs of her children was what held her distracted from her own immediate desires. Inside, she was always waiting for the day she could reunite with him and resume what a love interrupted. She now had enough money to care for some of the needs of her family, so she worried a little less. Now, love set aside came knocking on the door of her heart, and she could not ignore the urge to open the door and welcome it with all her very being. But her lover wasn't there and she had no way of finding where he was living or where he was working. How could she find one single person among 19 million others? Rayhana's feet felt like the concrete she was walking on and she strolled aimlessly as her tears obscured her vision. She stumbled and bumped into a few people and they told her to watch out where she was going. She almost fell off the pavement when a woman caught her just in time by the shoulders and stopped her from falling off the curb. The woman asked if she was all right and told her to try and be careful where she was walking. If she had fallen, she would have been trampled by thousands of people leaving their work who were rushing to catch the local train to return to their homes. It took Rayhana 3 hours to return to her neighborhood of slums. Her heart was heavy with sadness, feeling she had lost the love of her life. In a few weeks after her papers were reissued, she was going to fly to the rich country of the Arabs, and with her work visa, she would be gone for 2 long years. That night, Rayhana could not sleep and remained awake all night mourning the loss of her lover. The following day, early in the morning, Rayhana forced her body out of bed and got dressed. She went to the restaurant where the Negro boy asked her to meet him. When Babakir saw her coming towards him, he thought that she had lost one of her children and had been crying throughout the night. Something drastic seemed to happen overnight. She was no longer smiling as the day before, and she was not the same simple, innocent, and beautiful woman he had come to know. She looked very sad or deeply ill, as if she was going to die anytime. Babakir welcomed her and tried to find out what had happened, but she remained quiet. She was not in the mood to talk about anything. Babakir decided not to press her further for fear she might burst out in tears any moment. He just asked her to come with him to the passport office. She stood up and followed him silently as though he was leading her to a funeral procession. At the passport office, Babakir claimed that Rayhana was one of his clients and he wanted to get her passport reissued. He knew all about the procedures from his previous employment working in a travel agency. Before they reached the passport office, he convinced Rayhana to say that her passport and her daughter's passport were stolen while they were on their way to the airport. Usually, when someone claimed that their passport had been stolen, they had to bring a letter from the police showing that they filed a complaint. This procedure was not required for Rayhana and her daughter because Babakir inserted in each application 500 rupees. In this special instance, the legal requirement was waived. The person who accepted the application looked at Rayhana in a familiar way but could not place her face from all the hundreds of applicants they see every day. They were told it would take 3 months to process the applications. Those 3 months were reduced to 3 weeks when Babakir took out of his pocket a couple thousand rupees and slipped them beneath the 2 applications. After that, he tried to reduce the time to a week, but the clerk said that wasn't possible. The old Saudi told the Sudanese boy whatever amount he would spend on the paperwork of his maidservant and her daughter he would reimburse him. Babakir and Rayhana were about to leave the office, but the passport clerk asked Rayhana, "Have you changed your address or is it the same as before?" Rayhana looked at the Sudanese boy and said, "I have no address." The clerk raised a brow with a serious look and asked, "How did you get a passport without an address?" Rayhana answered, "I live in a slum. We don't have addresses in the slums." The clerk replied, "Then, how did you get a passport before?" "No passport can be issued without an address." Babakir tried to stop any further inquiry about her address. He was afraid Rayhana and her daughter might not get their passports reissued if they could not show how she obtained the passports in the first place. He knew Sheikh Ahmed might kill him if his beloved maidservant was prevented from coming to him for something so small as an address. "So," he said softly, "Sir, last time most likely her passports were issued listing the address of the travel agency. Can you check her previous applications?" It took the passport officer 20 minutes to find the old applications of Rayhana and her daughter. Then, he came and shouted at Rayhana, "Why did you say you didn't have an address? Here is the address you wrote last time. It is an address in Andheri Lakhandwala Shawls." When he mentioned this address, Rehana lit up like a Christmas tree. Suddenly a switch ignited a fire in her dying heart, the light of love illuminated her eyes, and she became the way she once was. Her wounded heart was now joyful at the possibility that she had found her lost love. Allah was opening doors for her where once they had been closed. She shouted joyfully, "Oh my, I forgot that I gave the address of my uncle who lives in Andheri." The clerk said, "Then this is your address?" Rehana, "Yes sir, it is my permanent address." Before the passport officer asked her anything further and spoil the happiness within her, Rehana requested he write down the address of her uncle, Jamal Khan, on a piece of paper so that she could tell him when to expect her 2 passports from the passport office. The passport officer jotted down the address of her lover and gave it to her. If it wasn't for the people standing all around her, Rehana would have kissed the paper and held it dearly against her bosom before she hid it just inside her bra. She had no handbag or purse and kept her valuables in her bra. She could not hide her happiness and flashed the Sudanese boy a gigantic smile and a wink with her beautiful dark eyes. She also bit her lower lip and released it slowly. Babakir was caught off guard and extremely surprised by her sudden change in mood and her flirtatious gestures. He thought all of a sudden Rehana had fallen in love with him and realized just how much she really needed him. Finally, she was appreciating him for the man that he was and was expressing her strong emotional awakening towards him with her beautiful eyes and sexy lips. They then walked outside the passport office where the two were supposed to say goodbye to each other but first discuss what day they were to meet again after 3 weeks had passed and after the 2 passports had arrived in the mail. Rehana just walked away almost flying on air without thanking Babakir or saying goodbye to him. Babakir was annoyed by her rude behavior towards him and lack of manners. He immediately jumped to the conclusion she was prejudiced against him because of the color of his skin and he felt very angry after all he had done to help her, even bribing the clerk with his own share of money he received from Sheikh Ahmed. His dignity was dashed to pieces and his injured pride impelled him to stop her before she proceeded any further. "Why are you running off like this without even saying thank you or goodbye to me? Do you think I am your servant that I have to do your work whether I like it or not? I am so sorry, dear brother. I did not mean to hurt your feelings, but I am in a great hurry to get back to the children. I am very sorry that I walked away without thanking you or saying goodbye to you. Please forgive me, brother. I am so very thankful to you for all you have done to help me. You are a very good boy." "Well, that is okay. Anyway, we must meet again to do your booking for the flight to Saudi Arabia. I can book your flight before you get your passports. If you want me to do that, I need to see you in a couple of days. Will you be able to meet me 2 days after today in the same restaurant and at the same time?" "Yes, of course I can. I will meet you there after 2 days. Rehana waited for Babakir to speak further, but when she saw him turn his face in the opposite direction and began to walk away, she felt free to find the love she was missing. She would not stop him even if he wanted to kiss her in a crowded place. She believed she belonged to him and he had the right to do whatever he wanted with her. With a joyful heart and great expectations, Rehana flew to Andheri and ended up at the Lokhandwala Shawls area where the street of her lover was listed on her paper. Lokhandwala complex was the most beautiful and the most expensive shopping centre in Bombay. Only Bollywood film stars and very wealthy Indians could afford to shop there. Nonetheless, shawls and slums in every place surrounded the grand metropolis except the downtown area. Jamal Khan's address indicated that his small chawl was buried somewhere behind those beautiful buildings of the Lokhandwala complex. Rehana asked many people for directions to the place on her piece of paper as she made her way through the crowded shawls. Finally, her legs took her to the chawl of her lover. It took her 1.5 hours travelling by bus, local train and rickshaw until she reached the chawl of her lover. Before she received the 10,000 rupees from her sponsor, Rehana very rarely sat in a rickshaw. A rickshaw was something between a taxi and an animal transport. There were 2 kinds of rickshaws in India, a motor rickshaw and a cycle rickshaw. A motor rickshaw was a motorbike converted into a small taxi. A cycle rickshaw is a tricycle or bicycle configured and used for transportation. In China, there was something worse than that which was called a human rickshaw. It was a human reduced to an animal and used by rich people to carry them around from one place to another, a form of abuse and slavery. The cheerful Rayhana was excited and overjoyed despite her tiredness and fatigue. Her long sleek legs finally reached the doorsteps of her lover. Jamal had already informed her that he had 3 sisters and 6 brothers besides his sick mother. Rayhana expected that one of his 3 sisters or 6 brothers would open the door and greet her and she would ask them to call her lover. She knocked on the chal door and waited. While she was waiting, she was surrounded by 6 stray dogs and 15 children. The children were very dirty and smelled of urine, waste, and smelled worse than the animals surrounding her in their filthy rags and emaciated bodies. They looked as if they had been playing in dried-up mud and swimming in the gutter, then let out to roam the streets. It was a wonder they were still alive or not deathly sick. Rayhana heard the door of the chal slowly open. A woman stood in the doorway. She did not look sick. She was short and behind her stood a man who was a little taller than her. The woman stretched out her right hand and shook it 3 or 4 times, a sign understood in India as "What do you want?" The woman's mouth was full of Indian pan. Her mouth was so full of stuff she could not talk. Rayhana asked politely, "I am looking for Jamal." The woman spit out the pan in her mouth, which looked like vomit or a soiled diaper. Some of it landed on Rayhana's shoe, which made her shoe red with spit. One famous Egyptian journalist visited India, and when he saw how the Indians were chewing and spitting Indian pan everywhere without caring about where it landed, he described them as the people who menstruate through their mouths. "Who is Jamal?" shouted the woman after she was able to open her mouth and talk. "My friend Jamal Khan gave me this address and told me to come and meet his sisters and his mother. There is no one by the name of Jamal Khan that lives here in this chal. We are Hindus and there are no Muslims living here," said the woman. The man behind her came out and said to Rayhana, "Do you mean the Muslim family that used to live here?" Before Rayhana responded to his question, he continued, "The Khan family sold to us their chal last year and moved to some slum area. We don't know their new place." Rayhana listened intently as those words launched forth out of his mouth as if they were sharp poisonous arrows shot right through her heart. Each word, one after the other, struck and pierced deep within and clung to the very bottom of her liver and kidneys. Tears came to her eyes and she wanted to cry and scream at him, but somehow she concealed her pain and restrained herself out in public. She lowered her face to hide her tears and turned her head and walked away, followed by dogs and children.